You want me to speak?
Yes, speak. I will be there to hear.
Okay, I would start while you are there, and then we. You know you on that. Okay. Anyway, now 52. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, excellencies. Wherever you are joining us from, welcome to the second edition of the Association of Retired Career Ambassadors of Nigeria Zoom conference and seminar series. We are glad to welcome each and every one of you to this event, and in particular, we welcome our guest speaker who is already with us, Professor BOLAJI AKINYEMI. Prof, you are most welcome. But before we start, I want to invite the president of Arcan, Ambassador Kayode Shinkaye, to make his opening remarks.
Yeah. Hello, Your Excellencies. I hope you can hear me. Yeah. Thank you, Your Excellencies, Speaker, distinguished invitees, and ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor and privilege to once again welcome our speaker, the participants, all Arcan members in the Arcan Virtual Seminar Series. Following the huge success recorded with our first outing on 22nd of June, the Arcan Ad Hoc Committee on Programs immediately proposed a second event for July and began the process to secure a suitable personality for the next event that would not only sustain the tempo, but also address an issue of currency and relevance to Nigeria and the global community. I am glad that the event is now taking place. The topic for today was agreed with our erudite and renowned compatriot, Professor BOLAJI AKINYEMI, whose personality needs no elaborate introduction in that he is very well known and is as good as you can get. In spite of this, however, my colleague and Arcan's second Vice President, Ambassador Joe Keshi, will be doing the justice to his introduction just after me. The topic of today's event, and I quote, post-COVID-19 pandemic, speculations for a new world order, end of quote. You will agree with me, properly fits this period that we have found ourselves in. Indeed, towards the end of 2019, when the new coronavirus illness was first recorded in Wuhan, China, nobody would have been able to forecast that it will impact the entire world and leave in its path such devastating effect and promote itself to the status of an existential threat and a danger to human existence. While the global effect has been pervasive, the pandemic has also afforded the global community an opportunity to come together to find a solution to the threat, which is perhaps the first of its type not to have spared any tribe, country, gender, race, age, or creed. Today, in view of its wide reach and the resulting effect that it has had on all facets of life, covering the global economy, social life, human relationships, traveling, communication, trade, and other aspects of human endeavor like politics and power equation, Professor AKINYEMI will, in the next 40 or so minutes, share his perspective on what will become a critical element of the new normal in international relations and power relationships. We are indeed expectant and anxious to listen to our speaker on the subject, who is a foremost political and foreign policy guru and author of so many intellectual journal articles and books on numerous issues. It is my hope that by the time Professor AKINYEMI is done, we would have been exposed to what may become the new thinking in our immediate future. Once again, I welcome you all and urge that you please listen attentively to our distinguished speaker, to what our distinguished speaker has for us. Good morning and thank you again.
I thank you, Ambassador Shinkaye, and I now have the honor to introduce the guest speaker for this morning, Professor BOLAJI AKINYEMI. As Ambassador Shinkaye said, Professor BOLAJI AKINYEMI is easily one of the most recognized academic giants in Nigeria. This is not so much because of his intellectual prowess, which is obvious to those who have met him, but more because in a number of ways, his life and activities span across a various spectrum of our national life. He has been a vocal activist and participated in several national activities, all in the hope for a just and better Nigeria. A graduate of Temple University, Philadelphia, he obtained his master's degree in international affairs, law and diplomacy from the famous Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, and his doctorate from Trinity College, Oxford. When I first met and got to know Professor BOLAJI AKINYEMI, he was a handsome, young, dashing lecturer and later senior lecturer, political science, University of Ibadan. Since then, he has taught and lectured in a number of universities in Africa, including the University of Lagos and University of Nairobi, Kenya. In Europe, Cambridge University and the Graduate Institute of International Studies, Geneva. And in America, the University of California, Los Angeles, and DePaul University, Indiana, readily comes to mind. In addition, he has also served on several university advisory boards across the globe, including the well-known Candido Mendes University, Brazil. In the 70s, Professor AKINYEMI and a host of young radical colleagues in Ibadan, and to some extent, Lagos, Nsukka, Ife, and Zaria, dominated public discourse, especially on the pages of the defunct Daily Times, the nation's #1 daily newspaper at that time. But it was his appointment first as a Director General of the National Institute of International Affairs, and later as the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, that brought him to national prominence and gave him the opportunity to put in practice all what he has taught a number of students, including yours sincerely. As the DGNIA, he initiated what he called a dialogue to broaden the base of foreign policy consultation, and indeed organized several dialogues with a number of major countries of the world. As foreign minister, he left behind two legacies: the Technical Aid Corps scheme, which refined Nigeria's aid assistance policy and conceived the bold idea of the concept of medium powers, which was intended to bring together medium powers for the purpose of using their collective bargaining power to mediate disputes within the international system. Lest we all forget, I cannot remember exactly whether it was when he was at the Institute or when he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs, but I do know that Professor AKINYEMI once did advocated for Nigeria to have the black bomb. And as he argued passionately, and I quote, "Nigeria has a sacred responsibility to challenge the racial monopoly of nuclear weapons," unquote. In 2007, Professor AKINYEMI was appointed a member of the Presidential Electoral Reform Committee and chairman of the national think tank. And in 2014, vice chairman of the National Constitutional Conference, which recommended significant changes to the governance structure of the country. A recipient of the Commander of the Republic, CFR, and many other honors, Professor AKINYEMI is a prolific author and has over 30 books, monographs, and perhaps over published articles to his credit. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, may I at this point respectfully invite our distinguished guest speaker, Professor BOLAJI AKINYEMI, Chairman AKINYEMI and Associates, to deliver his lecture. Professor AKINYEMI, I respectfully welcome you and invite you to take the floor.
Thank you very much. Good morning, all. Mr. President of Arcan, Ambassador Shinkai, let me thank you, and through you, thank Arcan for the honor of being invited to deliver this lecture. Through you and through Arcan, let me extend my best wishes to our minister, who I pray and hope is getting better. The question which immediately comes to mind is, what is the relevance of this lecture now? The emphasis being on now. Why now? The pandemic is still raging. Thousands are still dying every day. Experts, scientists don't even agree whether we're at the peak of the first one, but that definitely the second one is coming. So why now? Why deliver a lecture on post-COVID-19 now? From about April, if you read Foreign Affairs, The Economist, The Atlantic, New York Times, Le Monde, already their scholars are already talking about what a world order will look like after the pandemic is over. They're already doing the thinking for their own societies. And I believe we should not be quiet. Admittedly, we're all just going to speculate, but there's sufficient ground for informed speculation. Don't let us wait until the pandemic is over, conferences are being called, and then we all then start to scramble in terms of preparation of our own ideas. Let us also start the debate. Let us also start the conversation. A month ago, David Cameron, former British Prime Minister, was even proposing a new health organization that would deal with viral attacks. Even the development of a new organization before the pandemic is even over. So they're already being proactive. Let us also be proactive. Anyway, this is what informed my suggestion when I was approached by Arcan to tackle this topic. Number two, it prevents the kind of magisterial presentation you get. I'm going to throw ideas open to what I regard as part of the brightest and the best in this country, so that we started the debate, we start the conversation, and not that there are fixed ideas which are already fixed in. So if you disagree with my ideas, please don't hesitate. In any case, those who worked with me in my office as minister will know I welcome debate. I welcome disagreements. And I cannot think of a better audience than this to get engaged in this exercise. 5 years ago, 2015, I delivered a lecture which has proved prophetic. I delivered the lecture when ECOWAS was 40, and it was under the auspices of our ministry, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And what struck me as I was preparing for that lecture was that tragedy, human tragedy on a global scale, is what usually leads to dramatic developments on the global scene. One simply doesn't wake up one morning and think, oh, we must have an organization dealing with this. Something triggers it off. And my own historical analysis came to the conclusion that it is usually tragedy that breeds or stimulates thinkers, scholars, diplomatic professionals to come up with ideas as to how to ensure that that tragedy is not repeated. A few examples. It was the 30-year Napoleonic Wars in Europe that led to the formation of the Treaty, which kept the peace in Europe for 100 years. Followed by the First World War, which, as you all know, led to the League of Nations in 1915. Then World War II broke out in 1939, and that led to the United Nations in 1945, at the end of that year. So, in other words, tragedy breeds inspiration designed to avert a recurrence. even though I have focused on institutions, or I have just identified institutions, there is, however, a classic illustration of tragedy leading to new ideology or new ideas. One illustration I will use is slavery. Slavery, the tragedy of the Black race. Julius Nyerere once said, when he was asked for what was the origin of the Black race identifying themselves as the Black race. And he said, nobody needed to tell the slaves that they were Africans. The slaves looked at the white slavers, they looked at themselves, and they knew they were different. And that was how this concept of the Black race arose. And it is quite true if you think carefully about it. Before the slave trade, we were Zulus, Xhosas, Ashanti, Fanti, Hausa, Yoruba, the various groups that you had in Gambia, the Wolof and everything. I mean, let's not put too fine a point on it. We were ethnic groups. But on that slave ship, it then made no difference. What's the point of identifying yourself as Zulu and carrying on the ancient conflict with the Xhosas when you were being whipped at the same time by a totally different group? And it is my submission to you that the concept of we are all Africans started on that slave ship. In other words, the concept, the ideology of Pan-Africanism was born on that slave ship. If you like, foreign soil, or if you like, you may call it Africa in the diaspora, but was born on that slave ship. And so to that extent, it shouldn't have come as a surprise to you that the conceptualization of Pan-Africanism, the first conferences of Pan-Africanism that were held were actually bred by West Indian scholars. And later on, Manchester Conference, which was the last one that was held abroad before Nkrumah domesticated it. The point that I am trying to make, and which I made also at that lecture in Abuja, was that the stimulant for development in our field, and that often bred significant global changes, are bred laid deep in tragedy. And so strong is this in human psyche that in spite of the antagonisms from the French conservative African circles, considerable progress was made and is still being made on the Pan-African field. And we haven't yet got to what I would regard as the ultimate in Pan-Africanism. So we now have COVID-19 pandemic. And if you listen to Ambassador Shinkaye's introductory remarks, and also you listen to the scientists and analysts, that it is a pandemic like we've never had before. We probably can, I don't know, have a thought or two about that. Because in fact, we have had global pandemics before that have wiped out millions of the human race. You remember the Black Plague that came in, and the Black Plague was not even the first one. My own research shows that almost, I don't know, almost from time to time, 100 years, 150 years, a plague comes on, wipes out 50 million, 100 million of the human race. We domesticate the virus in our body as our body builds up the natural vaccine against that, and then we move on until the next one comes around. What has been called the Spanish flu in 1918 that wiped out also millions of the human race. And then we relaxed as, again, we internalized that flu. And you'll recall that even internalization of the Spanish flu did not abolish that flu. Every year, we have the flu. We have the influenza. And it does kill considerable number of people, especially in Europe. Since the Spanish flu, we've had SARS, we've had Ebola, we've had bovine pandemic, which almost wiped out all the cows that they have in Europe. I understand that we've had camel pandemic, again, the virus from camels in the Middle East. And that has been called the Middle East SARS. It's important for us to keep this series in mind, because it's one of my conclusions, and I might as well bring that to your attention, is scientists are now saying that the viral pandemics that we are getting is because we have now come too close to animals. We've encroached on their territory. In Europe, they are breeding them, doing experiments with them, and that this is why it allows viral transfer from these animals to the human race. And so it is very possible that one of the new organizations that may be formed after COVID-19 will be a world organization that will deal specifically with how we relate to the animal world, how we treat them, how we respect or disrespect them, and that actually we as a human race may need to back off from the encroachment on their territory. It will be my submission that that may be one of the organizations that will be formed. What do we expect the post-COVID-19 world order to look like? My submission is this. Number one, it is going at the beginning to be more nationalistic than internationalistic. That we are going to have a national monopolistic attitude at the very beginning. It will be a mixture of both, but nations are likely to dominate the development with what I will regard as a beggar my neighbor attitude. The new world order, the post-COVID-19 world order, is going to be characterized by a beggar my neighbor attitude. Countries will hoard developments, whether economic, health, or whatever have you. Let me give you a few illustrations. About 2-3 months ago, the United States attempted to bribe a German company so that all the medications that they were producing will be hoarded by the United States and will not be shared with the rest of the world. 2 weeks ago, as evidence became available that there's one particular drug surprisingly being made in Britain, the United States bought up the entire 3 months production line. So anything produced in that factory will be shipped to the United States. Number 3, the United Kingdom had come up with administrative regulations to prohibit the export of anti-COVID-19 drugs. I'm not talking about the vaccine yet. We haven't got to that one. Just the drugs that that are available and that they are using and that they are trying. China itself already has vaccine that it is using on its military, but that it is not sharing with the rest of the world. There are allegations of the Russians hacking into factories and research centers dealing with COVID-19 drugs. Now, I'm not passing a moral judgment. Governments and politicians are behaving the way politicians behave. Don't forget that governments got a bashing from their people when this pandemic started, because in practically every country, there was a shortage of masks, of shields, of PPE, of ventilators. There was a shortage. And the outcry was, why? Why didn't you hoard this? Why didn't we have this in our storage capacity? So that governments will now react by trying to hoard whatever it is that they have. It doesn't surprise me, but it's an indication of what you should expect from the New World Order, that it will be a nationalistic one. It will be a beggar my neighbor policy. We will keep what we have. We will keep what we have developed. We are not going to share this with the rest of the world. And this will explain why there will be all these allegations of the Chinese or the Russians hacking into and trying to steal research materials in the various factories and industries that you have. However, it's not going to work. You will know that by now, because COVID-19 could fly on the back of a bird leaving Ibadan, and maybe it's going to Russia for its winter. You know, birds fly, all over the place as they move with the weather. COVID-19 or any of these viral do not respect national boundaries. They go with the wind, they fly with the weather. And so, as countries then become aware that they cannot protect themselves by ignoring other countries, then that international approach will creep in. And so we will get a mixture of both. As diplomats, you know how, you know the kinds of debates you are going to have in these international conferences before you will get agreement. So it's not just something that will happen overnight, that all of a sudden governments and ambassadors will discover that, oh, we need to share whatever it is that we have discovered with other people. And so overnight, they will now agree. You know it yourself, how many conferences you are going to have, how many years it will take as it drags this way. You have pushbacks, but at the end of it, you will have a mixture of the nationalistic and the internationalistic approach. So there will be, like you have the World Health Organization, there will be a new health organization that will deal with this. And the charter and what it is going to task the brains of whoever will be representing us at that time. And this is the time to start thinking of what will be our lowest bargaining position and our highest bargaining position. We as a developing country are not necessarily going to be at a total disadvantage. One of the things that have made me proud, even in this tragedy that we have, is how in Nigeria, once the borders were shut, no importation, nothing, even secondary school kids were developing ventilators. At least if I'm to believe my eyes, what I saw on various television stations and presentations by the Presidential Task Force. Secondary school kids were, coming up with ventilators. The Nigerian Army, their factory in Kaduna, I believe it is, themselves also came up with ventilators. So various aspects of the PPE were developed in this country. And all you are going to need is for government to back them up, pour money into research and development so that they can come up with a better model than what they have now. And then government can buy those things, economically subsidize their production, and then we warehouse those ourselves. It's not making a rocket that will go to Mars. They've shown that they can do it. Please let us encourage them. So to that extent, we will have an input ourselves. Number two, in the development of drugs and medication, one of the things again that this pandemic has showed up is that again, we have scientists and people in the medical field who have got the intelligence. What they need is an enabling environment that will allow them to come up with the best of their abilities. The point I'm trying to make is I hope, because it is possible, that a post-COVID-19 economic environment will be one that will place less emphasis on imports, because it is importation that kills our own industries, that kills, that removes the encouragement of our scientists. It is importation. And so to that extent, we must place emphasis on import substituted goods. We must encourage that in our own environment. We also must value added goods. This is the right time for us to stop exporting ordinary cotton, ordinary cocoa, and what have you, and start adding value to it. It makes no sense to me that, in the 21st century, we will still be exporting cotton and then importing Chinese textile. That will be exporting raw cocoa and importing chocolate, whether it's chocolate to drink or really the chocolate. So when it is so little, we're not talking about 1940s. This is 2020. The machinery is there for us to produce these things ourselves based on the value added, paradigm. And because we will be dealing with an economic world that has collapsed, it will be easier for us to do. I'm not saying that it's every country that will have the capability to do this. And this will bring me to one of my own pet projects. It is the medium power countries that also will have the capability to do all these things that I'm talking about. So the superpowers, the industrialized countries, will have one or two legs up. We, as a medium power country, will have one leg up, while, well, no, God help, what diplomatically, but with respect, I will call the banana republics. Nigeria is not a banana republic. Nigeria is not. I was having a discussion yesterday, and in the middle of people asked me, why are you still so passionate about Nigeria? Why are you optimistic about Nigeria? And I said, haven't put impossible, difficult people in Nigeria. God also put so much resources into this country. The Economist in October 2019 said that a think tank at Chatham House has said 586 billion, B for Bravo, $586 billion had been stolen from Nigeria since independence. And yet, look at how much we still have. look at how much we still have to be stolen, even in 2020. And whether it is crude oil, well, if you take a map of the resources of Nigeria, you will be amazed as to why do we fight over just things we are picking on the surface. Why? We are just still scratching the surface. So I am sure that we, as a medium country, a medium power country, we will have the capability to latch on to the opportunities that will be available post-COVID-19. I expect possibly people to raise the question of, well, with UNCTAD and the World Trade Organization, how are we going to be able to exploit the opportunities that will come our way? And the reason why I think we will be able to do so is because the developed countries who normally put stumbling blocks in our way because of their own nationalistic approach, which I had identified earlier on, would themselves have weakened WTO and UNCTAD. They would have weakened that disposition or the disposition of those organizations to attack us when we put subsidies in place or when we ourselves adopt a nationalistic approach. The superpowers will have weakened those organizations. And so in the process of either now strengthening those organizations or coming up with new ones, we will be able to push our own interests at a time when they will be weak and we will be upcoming. And one of the things, perhaps, if we play against very well, is that the problem between the United States and China can be to our favor. Can be to our favor. Because the Chinese are now a developed economic country. The United States wants to cope with China and see how they can prevent China from taking over America. Globally. That as they will be looking, there are things which you'll be able to ask for. And some of those things will be things that will allow our economic base. All of this, of course, will not be automatic. They are not going to happen because we wish them to happen. We ourselves will have to put into place factors that are going to strengthen our hands. Our major economic sectors will have to be private sector driven. I have not always held this view. In the 70s, well, maybe you'll say I was a socialist in the sense that I was against capitalism. I thought, there were exploiters and that it is government that should control the heights of our economy. I've become wiser since then because I've seen what has happened. So our major economic sectors will have to be driven by the private sector. Of course, we will still have the regulatory power. I'm not saying that Nigeria should be surrendered to both domestic and international monopolistic, exploitative organizations. I'm not saying that. Let us keep it in mind. And I concede that businessmen are in the business of making money, of making profit. It is left to government to control the way they will behave. Today, probably in a few hours' time, Google, Facebook, I think there are about 5 of them are going to face Congress because Congress thinks that they are monopolies and that's not in the interest of the United States. So even in the so-called capitalist America, they make regulations to make sure that people are not ripped off and that the country itself is not ripped off. So I'm not advocating a hands-off policy on the part of our government. Our government should still have the regulatory position to regulate the private sector, but let the private sector drive our economy. They want to make money. They wouldn't want those companies to collapse. And in the process, they will serve us. Number 2, let our economic development be driven by the desire to industrialize. Enough of this exportation of cocoa, exportation of cotton, the rubbish that is going on in Zamfara, in Jos, in my own village, in Ilesha, on gold exploitation, where Indians, Lebanese just come in, and now Chinese, and that they're busy destroying farmlands, using mercury to pollute. That's not what I am talking about. If we are going to industrialize, let us industrialize. Let us not call a goat a cow because they both have 4 legs. What the Chinese are doing in Nigeria, they are not helping us industrialize. So our economic development must be driven by industrialization. Going to be a player on the global scale, our elite must be the brightest and the best. This is something which you should understand, because, not because I was once your minister, but because you, as professionals, were the brightest and the best in this country. Our civil service, our military elite must be run by the brightest and the best. They must be. And what does this mean? One of the things that drove me into depression 2 weeks ago was when I saw UAE send a rocket to Mars. UAE, what's their population? We got independence before them. How much did that rocket experiment cost? $200 million. $200 million. That's how much it cost the UAE. They were not even going to the moon. They were going to Mars. Just give me 1/10 of the money that we have stolen, given the figures I gave you or 586 billion. Give me 1/10 of that. And I also will send a rocket to Mars. Why is Nigeria not playing? Was it not Galileo who said, you know, damn me, he locum standing. Give me a place to stand and I will move the world. Why are we not doing that? The answer is because we don't allow our brightest and the best to be in charge of our programs. We have to change our attitude towards professionals. We have to change our attitude towards intellectuals. Once you have a vision of where you want to go, you must set that vision first. Then you will know whom you will put there. Because my screen is rather small, I'm not sure whether it's not General Haruna I am seeing on my screen. Because what I want to say is about the military. If it's General Haruna, I hope he will forgive me. The military set up a defense industry the same time that Brazil set up its own. But it's not, at least they didn't claim that, you know, Kilishi was the best thing they've developed. But what have they developed in that defense industry compared to Brazil? Brazil Embraer aircraft, tanks, ships, and what have we done? And yet there are also bright brains in the military. Have they been given an opportunity to be in charge? 2 days ago, the president of Turkey, I haven't done the research of when he set up their defense industry, but it was now boasting, we produce some of the best planes, some of the best tanks, some of the best this, some of the best that, the best airport in the world. At least that's what he said. What do we have? What do we have to be proud of? We don't need to bring in consultants from anywhere. The Nigerians abroad have actually shown you what give a Nigerian brain, give him the opportunity. There was somebody, a Nigerian, he's back now at home. I would have advised him not to come home. He's from Sokoto. He became the designer for General Motors when he went to the United States. I understand they begged him not to leave the job. He was the best they ever had. Now he's come back home, and I'm not sure whether we are going to hear anything about him. So without belaboring the point, we must look for our brightest and the best. And this is not tribalism on my part. I have held the view that any local government in Nigeria, go there, you will find brains. Just go there. You will find brains. All you have to do is provide them the environment. I will round up, taking too long. One of the things that got us on the wrong turning, where we took the wrong turn in Nigeria, was the Udoji Awards. The exercise that was done where we were all now, I don't even know, we were all panel beaten into the same hierarchy. Major General equals permanent secretary, equals professor, equals vice chancellor, and therefore salaries and perks have to be the same. I hope one of the lessons we've learned from this pandemic is when we were ill, you looked for a doctor. We didn't look for a permanent secretary, Ministry of Works. You look for a medical doctor. You didn't look for a professor of international relations. Therefore, you cannot pay a medical doctor who is in charge of life the same salary as a professor of international relations or as a minister. If you want to go to the moon, the scientists you are going to use, you cannot say you are going to pay them as that was done. That thing must be scrapped. And I think while it is still in our brains that what this pandemic has taught us is that we must prioritize our vision, our goals, and pay people accordingly, rather than because you pay a professor you're a senior librarian, will not say we're on the same scale, you must pay me, and things like that. We got it wrong with Udoji. It is not too late for us to reverse ourselves. Finally, this is going to be a contentious one. COVID-19 and human rights, or COVID-19 and democracy, has had to take away some of our rights. Lockdown, we must wear masks. The reason I'm not wearing a mask is because I'm alone in my study. So I'm not going to infect anybody, or nobody's going to infect me. But as soon as I step out, even into my garden, because there are other people there, I put on a mask. Now it's become compulsory to wear a mask. You can get arrested for it. At the peak of it, you couldn't even leave your house. It was against the law. So we've lost some of our human rights in government reaction to this pandemic. Are we going to get this right back? Some we will get back, but not all. Simply because nobody knows how long this pandemic is going to last. Nobody. And if it mutates, then how do we protect ourselves? Americans, I get so, pardon my language, I get so pissed off. I say, well, it's my right. Nobody can tell me, yeah, it's your right to kill yourself. That's not your right to kill other people. I'm going to enter the plane and nobody's going to force it. Yes, they will throw you off that plane. Even their president now, who's not showing the leadership, is finally going to, well, wear masks. So we will lose some of our human rights as governments, and governments don't like to surrender power. So even some of the rights that they could freely give back to us, they're gonna hold on to it. I won't be surprised if governments start to talk about postponement of elections, have postal voting. But how about in a developing country like Nigeria, where we don't have postal voting? And if we are having two experiments now, Edo and Ondo, if there are spikes in COVID-19 infection after the elections, then I will not be surprised if there will not be moves to postpone elections. So there will have to be a question mark on how democracy will evolve post-COVID-19 or even in the middle of COVID-19. Vaccinations. Before, it will be my right, if I'm ill, to decide, no, I don't want to take that medicine. But I suspect that when they get vaccination, government is going to insist on everybody being vaccinated, irrespective of all this talk about the conspiracy because one person can infect 5 other people, the 5 will infect 50, the 50, and before you know it, again, we have an epidemic on our hands. So government will insist that no one will have to accept vaccination. So, Excellencies, these are my thoughts. These are my views. These are my own speculations. I haven't covered, because I can see the notes I've made, I haven't covered everything. And as an old man, I'm getting tired of listening to myself. So, Mr. President of Arcan, thank you for the opportunity. I'm returning the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor BOLAJI AKINYEMI. We thank you most sincerely for your focus this morning. And now I'm going to open the floor for comments and questions. And if you want to make a contribution, if you want to ask questions, please indicate. We will be able to pick, if you raise your hands, and if you indicate you want to make comments. And at the same time, when you do have the floor, please simply introduce yourself and make your comments or ask your questions. I already have Ambassador Onobu, I believe, that has indicated he wants to contribute. So I yield the floor to Ambassador Onobu, please. Unmute now. Ambassador Onobu, please unmute your phone.
Is it okay now?
Yeah. Yes, you are on.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Joe. I really don't have a question. I just want the Prof and the former minister to know that I'm here, and I enjoy the time that I worked for him and under him. I think those moments were really a gift. When he started speaking just now, he said that he encouraged us, his staff, at the time to engage in debates with him. And that indeed was true, actually. And there were many instances where we would, for hours on end, we would debate the great issues that inform some of the policies that he undertook. You yourself, you had mentioned the concept of medium powers. It was the result, so to speak, of the great intellectual conversations that we had, and how he tried to give life to it. And even though it didn't quite stand the test of time, but it was a monumental idea. And that was incredible, really. So also, of course, was the, the technical aid course scheme that has become a living at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. As our foreign minister, All I can say is that the excellence of his thought and has stood the test of time. Apart, of course, from the great idea that he has put on the table today, how Nigeria is going to respond to the challenges that are imminent, that are on the horizon, that as a people, and as a country that wants to lead at least the African region or our continent, how we must begin to respond to those issues. We don't have time to wait at all. We don't have time to waste. And I think this is the time now, even though, as he himself had said, we haven't seen the end of the pandemic yet, but it is now that we must begin to prepare for its aftermath. What will be the we claim a space for ourselves? If our policymakers understand this, if we don't cut corners, then I think Nigeria will be in a position to lead as we must lead. If I took one thing away from the time that I spent working for him, is the fact that he always kept on telling us, that we must never be diffident, we must never be reticent, we will never be reluctant about what Nigeria is and about our role in the world. I think one phrase that he always used was that we must never be apologetic about, the potential power of Nigeria and how we can use it, to push our national interests. I think this, in sum, this is what he's telling us today. Let's get ready. And I think we all should understand the message that comes from the power of his intellect and the power of his argument. Once we can put these things together and run with them, I think we'll be able to carve a niche for us and maintain that in world affairs. That's what I just want to say right now. Maybe I'll jump in later on when I hear other comments from some of my colleagues here. But today really was a beauty. I expected no less, having worked with a great man and a great intellectual over the years, for the last 40 years. It's a man I hold in the highest of esteem. Thank you very much.
Boyega Adejumo, you have the floor. Boyega Adejumo, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, sir. I first would want to say a big thank you to the organizers of this Zoom meeting. It's a beautiful thing to behold. And to say a big thank you to Professor BOLAJI AKINYEMI for giving us a very brilliant submission. The idea is this. I think what we need to perhaps take into cognizance from all that the Prof has said to us is that there's a dearth. There are actually deficits in what I will call the human capital development, the process of throwing up the right kind of people to be able to drive governance and policies. Professor AKINYEMI likely served in the military era, and in which case we had consultations, even by the military, by their composition, they practice inclusiveness. But we now have a civilian administration that has not been able to harness all the potentials of those who can make Nigeria great. We have wars in like 3 of the 6 zones going on simultaneously, which is not allowing us to progress. We have all the raw materials that have been rightly identified, but nothing is being done to husband, to harness all of these things. And we have those who are gifted in the policy making processes to drive the economy, to drive Nigeria, to make us an industrial base. And do we actually have a listening government that is even ready to allow the potential of the individuals, let alone the greater potential of the country, to be able to come out from this COVID experience and say we have an opportunity to develop through what has happened globally. Many countries have come out of chaos, becoming stronger. We know the story of Germany, even with the devastation of the war, how they came out. America survived the Wall Street crash and the recession of the 20s. But how is Nigeria going to cope in a world that is dynamic? And we have seen it with even the United Arab Emirates and elsewhere. We saw it with the Asian tigers. How do we make this government to listen, to be able to have the idea of the professionals that can drive the economy to be brought into the mainstream. That is the challenge that I see. And perhaps the challenge to this body that organized this Zoom meeting, to be able to influence positive, so that we won't just come and have this sort of a beautiful thing and then nothing happens after. How do we begin to get them to understand that this is the 21st century and the world is moving, and the world will probably leave us behind, and we won't be able to realize our potentials in time, not even now, perhaps not even in the nearest future, so that we don't go the way of other nations. We may not be a banana republic yet, but I can tell you Nigeria is actually close to being a failed state. That's my submission, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Adejumo. I think I have Ambassador Okonga. I think you've asked for the floor, if I see properly still. Am I right? Ambassador Okonga. I thought it came up. Okay, I go to Ambassador Akinsoya. Ambassador Akinsoya, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, moderator. I want to join in thanking our guest lecturer, a distinguished former foreign minister, a thinker, for the very brilliant exposition that he has given us. We are not surprised because we know he's John, a deep thinker, somebody who thinks without the box. And that is very evident in all that he's been able to tell us today. I have very personal admiration for Professor AKINYEMI. Not only was he a role model, but also he brought me. But the point I want to make about his presentation that was brilliant is that a lot of people are now saying that since we don't know when the strike, when the COVID-19 will end, that we should be talking about how to live with the COVID-19, which will entail behavioral patterns, the new world order, and other things that you said, and the responses. So I don't know, what is your take about that? That we, even in Nigeria, we need a new behavioral order. No travels, improving our healthcare, and also ensuring that no wastes, no parties, and to ensure that we have a new behavioral pattern that will reflect our living with COVID-19. That is my question, sir.
Ambassador Akinsoya, I have Ambassador Abdul Wahab. Goodness is good. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, Your Excellencies. I greet everyone with greetings of peace, and I pray that our Honorable Minister Onyema, I wish him quick recovery and to come back to continue to do his good job. I really appreciate the lecture by our mentor and former foreign minister, Professor Adeyemi. Actually, I don't want him to stop, but let me quickly mention some important issues that I can take away from his speech. He talked that post-coronavirus New World Order, it can never be the same again. Everything has changed. And he spoke of one important issue, which I really appreciate, is Nigerian export and import. If we want to survive as a nation, before we develop, we must export and export and export. He has enumerated that we have all the resources, the manpower, the market, and the resources, but we all need to have good leadership. One thing I think should not be forgotten is, where is the power to power this? We don't have the power to power our development. The New World Order is showing that there's going to be increase in online business, business tech, but unfortunately, nothing we can do if we don't have the power to power our industry, to power production in order to boost our export. And what I see is that the people in the United Arab Emirates, which is not up to the population of Lagos Island or Lagos City, they develop because they have love. They spend less time on argument, on fighting. They love each other. In Nigeria, we do not love ourselves. That's why you can see Nigerians abroad are doing very well, but at home, we don't perform. So we must actually think how to inculcate love and into our life and development. Finally, we don't do things in the right way. We always, as Nigeria, do the wrong thing. For God's sake, can we now see how much is Naira to a dollar? When there was conversion from pound sterling to Naira, I was working then in Radio Nigeria. I remember very well Professor AKINYEMI's contribution at Ibadan. It was 1 Naira to 1 pound, and 1 Naira was $1.60 at that time. How do we get here? How do we get here? It's painful. I don't want to be emotional, Your Excellencies. Finally, Nigeria always do the wrong thing. We have the brains, we have the resources, we have the market. We don't need to go anywhere. Our leaders are running, going abroad, going abroad. If we get our acts together, we make it, all other countries will come to us. Solution to our problem is that Nigeria, as a nation, we must learn how to do the right thing by the right person, at the right time, at the right place, in the right manner. Thank you very much. God bless Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. I yield the floor to Ambassador Humphrey Ojiako. I think you raised your hand. And after that, Babatunde Ogala, you also will follow. Ambassador Ojiako, you have the floor. Ambassador Ojiako, are you still on?
Yes, I'm on.
You have the floor.
Thank you, sir. Please let me take the opportunity immediately to thank you and the leadership of Arcan for organizing this very wonderful occasion for us. Thank you very much, sir. And to Professor BOLAJI AKINYEMI, I am very proud, sir, to say that I share alumni with you at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. It makes me so proud that you've presented to us a wonderful gift for today, these boring times. Sir, without taking much of your time, I have a couple of questions to raise for you. They're not really questions so much as things you could consider from two directions. The first one is your position on the weakening of the monitoring institutions, international organizations like the WTO, WIPO, UNCTAD, and the rest of them that, that actually monitor and kind of standardize global practices in international trade, industrialization, and so on. Now, you seem to project the idea that the weakening of these institutions will be to the benefit of developing countries, Nigeria included, especially the countries you refer to as medium power countries. Now, sir, if you reconsider, how really do you think that countries in this category could use the industrial instruments that are denying them normally to industrialize? That is the key. Do you not think that the weakening of these institutions that are usually pro-developing economies that are often assisting with the interests of developing countries, weakening them would work in the opposite direction of our industrialization goals? The second issue I wanted to raise with you, sir, is this thing you mentioned about China. For us in Arcan, it has been a subject of conversation several times, and opinions tend to scatter in all directions. It is, you said, China is not helping Nigeria to industrialize. Again, I think this is, for me, this is the key takeaway from this lecture given to us today. I believe that this on its own stands for another detailed lecture, so that both those who govern Nigeria at all levels will begin to rethink our relationships with countries like China, especially China. In fact, at the National Assembly right now, there is an issue raging about the sovereignty of Nigeria vis-a-vis Chinese loans. And I have heard several officials insist, oh, China is our friend. They will not do anything to hurt Nigeria. Excellency, this is something I would love very much if you could help us address it. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Diako, I think before I invite, okay, let me take Ambassador Wole Kuka, and then we allow Professor Akinyemi to address 2 or 3 of these issues, and then we go back to comments and answers. Ambassador Wole Kuka, if you can hear me, you have the floor.
Thank you, moderator. I hope you can hear me too.
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you very much. Let me thank the executive for organizing this conference, and especially thank our professor, our former minister, AKINYEMI, with whom I also worked while he was propounding the concept of medium powers and technical aid corps. I'm very proud of that because many of us benefited from that. Well, let's talk about this present world order. This present world order have been debated severally by all our institutions of learning, foreign policy, foreign ministry, the NIPS, and we have always had debates and conclusions that have never seen the light of the day. Where do we domesticate this and ensure that these things work? Now, we have had new information from Professor Akinyemi today. New information about how we will move ahead. Professor Akinyemi will soon leave us alone. We are still talking about government. Why do we not think of domesticating these things with the National Assembly that we can influence and control from time to time? We can go to them and government will come and government will go. National Assembly, probably they will remain here and there 50-50%. I think we should not criminalize government of not doing it. We ourselves will become parliamentarians. Many of us will do that. Many of us are politicians. As we see this forum, we speak every day on this platform. Where does this lead us? I think we need to find another medium that will be so influential that can take matters to the National Assembly to make many of these fresh ideas something to ponder on, which we can transfer. Because I have seen 30 years, 40 years of discussions on all levels. We have not seen anything being concretized. it is government, but government comes, government goes. Government has its own agenda. But we should rely on our politicians. You all are politicians, one way or the other. I've not seen where you go back to government. Look at China. We must have a common value for this country. We don't have what we call common national values. Because now somebody spoke now that we are fighting 3 wars here. It is true. But if we have a common national value that we bring everything together in one place, we shall be able to pursue it. Maybe a platform like Foreign Affairs, Arcan, can push these matters every day and remind the government and assembly of what our commitments have always been. So I think we should find a way of shifting away from government, push these things back to the assemblies and to our private sector. Private sector are always disappointed when they hear government and government, but they are becoming more endearing to the public, to the private sector, to the assembly, to the people who they will join hands with to move this country forward. COVID or no COVID, if we have don't think of leading any country in this Africa. We have not led ourselves enough. Let us come together and lead ourselves and then have a common policy to move ahead. I thank you. Maybe we'll have another opportunity. We should have another debate to put this thing forward. We are talking about China. China is a country that many people is the original intention of China in this world. What do they want in Africa? Are we ready to submit ourselves to another to divorce? Professor Akemi said he has become wiser in certain things. Now, Africa should become wiser to deal with those who want to exploit us, not like the Western world who did. Well, I think this is a food for thought for all of us. Yes. Thank you for listening to me, Chairman.
There's a gentleman that has been waiting, Babatunde Ogala. Please, you have the floor. Ambassador Kuka, thank you very much. I like your submission that we are all politicians, one way or the other. Let me just say that 2003 it's on the way, and so AKAN members, let's get ready. Babatunde Ogala, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, sir. First, let me, just in case it happened that I intruded, I'm not your member, but I got the link, I found the topic interesting, and I logged in.
We welcome you. This is one of those things we want to achieve by not just having members, but non-members as well. We all benefit from learning and sharing ideas with one another. Thank you for coming, Mr. Gala.
I remember that. I'll just go straight to my point. Professor Akinyemi, I thank you very much for your deep insights into the issues and the problems, as well as the opportunities, and that is where I hold the key, that this country could reap from COVID-19 pandemic as it is. But the question I've often asked myself is, where did we get it wrong? If we go to where we got it wrong, which a lot of the time, because the PROF has covered the field and there's nothing more to add, the opportunities, it will all seem to boil down to corruption. Not because we don't know what to do, but over time, we have refused or neglected to do that which ought to be done, perhaps out of selfishness, greed, and such other vices. And if we agree that it is this corruption that has led us to where we are, how then did we get there? How does the country think so deep into corruption that corruption itself as an institution seems to be bigger than this country today? In my opinion, we unfortunately have allowed corruption to become a culture in our country as a people. And why do I say this? We take it from the family level. PROF is appointed a minister. The next thing,
if his problem, everybody's problem becomes his. In his church, expectations are high. Who is he helping? What is he donating? He's being given meaningless titles, chieftaincy titles, doctorate degrees, and on it goes. And when it does not do, the next thing I hear, Mr. Gala was a member of the House. Who did he do anything? Prof, incidentally, I represented your constituency, and I know you supported me back then. Yeah. Mr. Gala is a member of the House. Who has he helped? How does he help if he has to go outside his legitimate earning? And I was privileged to have sat down with Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore some time back. And he said, to fix Singapore, they had to address 3 issues. Number 1, corruption. 2nd, corruption. And number 3, corruption. He said, once they got that right, the average Singaporean now had a collateral. And his collateral was his integrity. And once you have that, he said every other thing fell in place. So how then can we address this? I think it's through a moral reorientation. I think it's through a change of values. Let us ask ourselves some simple questions first. Prof talked about why are we exporting raw cocoa, exporting raw cotton, raw rubber, raw granite, everything raw. Let's juxtapose this. Why is the arid north feeding the tropical south of Nigeria? Why between Lagos and Ibadan, Abeokuta to Benin, on both sides we have dense forest and nobody is cultivated. Nobody wants to go back to the farm. Why is that so? Sirs, I ask you, sir, many of you are retired diplomats and ambassadors from the civil service. What manner of successors did you build that are now the ones who aid the deep corruption in the service? Could it be our collective problem? Because I know I've been in government, albeit at the legislative level. I've been a principal national officer of a national party. And I know as a fact that there is no single political appointee that can have access to public funds without the collaboration of the civil service. From time immemorial, who raises the voucher? Who advises on the head where the money is? The civil service, the bureaucracy, not the political class. And even those in the political class, because I've heard us here talk about we are not using intellectuals, we are not using academics, we are not using the best. When we have used some of our very best, and indeed this country has put its very best forward, and we need not mention it. How did they come out? I've seen somebody write about the youth. Between 1999 and 2007, most of our governors, including those who were convicted, were young people who became governors before age 50, and some in their 30s. And even the older ones, the older generation. Why is a 70-year-old man wanting a 80-year-old man acquire what he does not need? It's not just a poverty mentality. So I think, and then we have also used even people who are clergymen. Not supposed to be a moral leader. We have used academics. There's no sector. Of course, we need not talk about the bank, which I've always maintained is the bastion of corruption in this country. So, sir, what I am suggesting, it is not a fight for the government alone. It is our collective responsibility. And it is in all of us, me included, who seek unmerited favor, who expect people to bend to me, and where it starts. A contract to construct a road, for instance, because Ambassador Akifanya is my boy, he knows I'm a matter of time before I hit him. I made my boy. He says, Abu, look, that contract I want to. He's not willing to compete.
Thank you.
So, sir, I think, in conclusion, sir, I think should start thinking of how we want to change orientation. It's not a 5-year thing, not a 10-year thing, but we cannot start in our own little corner. Start from your home. I've been to public office, and I will boldly say and proudly say, I went into government with my integrity. I came out with my integrity. I didn't leave it there. If I can, I believe you can, and we all can. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to give the floor back to Professor AKINYEMI to take to respond to not the comments. I mean, the initial comments, or were from Professor AKINYEMI's immediate staff when he was Minister of Foreign Affairs. And I want to say to all of them who has praised the Prof and admired the Prof that before they were, we, the students of Professor AKINYEMI, were too. So let's put that on record. But Prof, I just want you to address your mind to the issue of behavioral change that Ambassador Akinsoya raised.
Thank you.
And then there was also 3 questions. There was also a question on the international organizations and, of course, China. And the last speaker spoke about the need for a new orientation, new values, or new moral attitude in this country. How do you respond to all this, Prof?
Thank you very much. Let me also put on record my appreciation of the immense contribution of my former staff at the ministry. I wasn't an easy boss to work with, but they stood up to the task. They pushed back when they disagreed with me. They helped to refine some of the ideas and concepts that I had, and especially those who were in the what was the title? What was the official title? Policy Development Division, something like that. Anyway, I thank them. I really enjoyed, and it changed my views again in referring to you guys as the brightest and the best. I wasn't calling favor. I was drawing my conclusion from the staff that I worked with in the 2.5 years that I was in the ministry. Now, let me start with the last contribution. And I will suggest, even though you may run the risk of being arrested for treason, I would suggest that perhaps you have a round table on development and democracy, or on corruption and democracy. You see, when people talk about Lee Kuan Yew, how many people realize that Lee Kuan Yew, even though he organized elections, was not really a Democrat? He jailed opposition leaders. And the reason being that, like Nigeria, Singapore also have problems being a multi-ethnic nation. In fact, breaking away or being tossed out of what was Malaysia at that time was because the Malays could not really accept the pushful character of the Chinese. And when they were pushed out from Singapore, there were also other minority groups in Singapore. He didn't really, he wasn't tolerant towards them. However, it is true that he had integrity. Number two, he picked the brightest and the best. I will continue to use that term because when he was asked, he said, look, I picked all members of my cabinet from either Cambridge or Oxford. We were colleagues, we were on the same intellectual lane, so that when we got ideas from the World Bank or the IMF, we were able to debate them. And he said, you know what? I developed Singapore by turning down every single idea I got from the World Bank. If we ourselves had resisted the World Bank program that led to devaluation of our Naira, we may not be in the position that we are in now. So I would suggest you have a round table on development and democracy. Look at Rwanda, believe me, if Rwanda had the 1/3 of the resources that we have in Nigeria, Rwanda will have gone to the moon by now, because you had a president with a focus, with a vision, and who also doesn't tolerate opposition. You will, sooner or later, you have to ask yourself, what do we gain when we have a politics that is determined by ethnic loyalties, ethnic competition? I would rather that we have a system that is based on communalism, that we are a society of different groups, and all these groups must be included in governance, rather than this Western concept of democracy. We now talk about rotation. So we are no longer really dependent on majoritarian democracy. We now we rotate power, so it doesn't really matter. It's not really them for the best. It's X's turn or Y's turn. And look at the way we have even brought it down to the level of local governments. How many chairmen of local government serve more than 2 terms? How many? So from the president, it was meant to apply to the presidency. Now senators, no, unless you are the wife of somebody. And then the chairman local government, it's only the party leader that then stays forever. Everybody else is then rotated. John Lewis, who just died and is being honored in the United States, how long did he spend in Congress that he became an authority, a pillar in Congress? In Nigeria, what do we have that? Do we practice that? So, as I said, whether you can develop with the kind of democracy we are practicing is, I think, a subject that you need to debate. But when we talk about the development of Singapore and the development of Rwanda, bear that in mind, that really they were not democratic. And the same thing now applies in dealing with corruption. You see, I can see the dilemma for a president who wants to deal with corruption when probably 45%, if not more, of the senators have cases in court by the EFCC. If you decide to push that, then they threaten you with impeachment. while I like the concept, I can understand the concept of impeachment and the role it's supposed to play, but it has now become a pro-corruption weapon to hamstring the government in dealing with corruption. I would have liked the situation, I mean, with hindsight now, where you put a provision there. If you impeach a president, the National Assembly or the State House of Assembly will stand automatically dissolved. So we all go for elections. That way, there will be less rascally about threatening progress with impeachment. But the last week, I was listening to a program, and it's interesting, we keep coming back to Singapore, where somebody who was a colleague of Lee Kuan Yew was asked, how did you solve the problem of corruption in Singapore? He said, it was very easy. You start at the top. That when they formed their government, they had a code of conduct. That the first minister whose trip on holidays was sponsored by a private company. When that minister came back, he was arrested, he was tried, and he was jailed. He said that was the end of corruption in Singapore. Because people say if you can jail a minister, then you can jail anybody. Now, how do you get to a situation where you try that in Nigeria? I know ministers have been arrested, but how many of them really ended up in jail? We have the question of immunity for the governors. Again, it shouldn't have been a problem. I once spoke to Ribadu when he was in power. I said, okay, you cannot touch governors, and you cannot touch deputy governors because of immunity. But as someone said here, you cannot move money without somebody getting to know about it. Go after the chief of staff. Go after his commissioners. Go after the people who helped remove that money. You isolate him. And that way, when he finishes his term of office, you'll be waiting for him. But because by that time, the EFCC itself was a weapon to go after political opponents. You know, Rebadu didn't say the point I was making. So I agree with you. I don't want to sound like President Buhari, but if we don't kill corruption, corruption is going to kill us in this country at the rate at which it is going. Ambassador Coker, I like your idea of Arcan's role in the way forward. And I think it's a good suggestion you have come up with. I believe that if from time to time Arcan goes to the Speaker and the President of the Senate with ideas, draft bills that will be under their names, because you've got to play up to the ego of politicians, but that will be under their names. They do that in the United States. This bill sponsored by President Lawan and Speaker Gbajabiamila dealing with this matter. You may be surprised as to how responsive they will be to that. But not just to have a conference, have a communique, it's published in the newspaper, and you post a copy to them. That won't get anywhere. So I like the idea that Ambassador Croker was talking about, and I think it may work. Why I said that WTO and UNCTAD have been negative towards our development is because they are against subsidy, which is what we as a developing country needs to do for our industry. And they have been against tariffs, whereas other countries, even the developed countries, the United States has the highest agricultural tariff, agricultural subsidy in the world. And yet they get away with it. So, but if they are weakened, or when they are weakened, not if, when they are weakened by, if you like, the nationalistic attitudes and profiles of developed countries, we can then go under the radar, develop our factories and industries through a program of subsidy, not the kind of subsidy we are doing with fuel, which everybody admits is no subsidy. No, real subsidy where farmers for agriculture and also people with real factories on the ground. I agree with the ambassador who says, you know, we don't have power to power. It struck me that you could have what I would call a village approach actually to power. And by that I mean forget PHCN or whatever you call it. If you are going to industrialize, actually localize power production, that will be, you know, you could have industrial cities. They do this in China. You could have industrial cities. Who was it that I went to? I think it was Desiani when she was minister for petroleum. And I pointed out that in Malaysia, they have local refineries. Not the big giant refineries that we have here that never, local refineries that look in this area, this is the amount of diesel or petrol or power that we need. It's so easy to build that mini refinery that will then produce the things that you need. It's the same thing with power. And that's why I call it village power. Don't think of power that will supply the whole of, you know, middle belt power. No. If you have, this is the industrial village that we have, localize the power, and that will be within our capability to produce the power for, you know, that area. There is a new behavioral order. Never had that term before, and I like it. No Owambe parties. Thank you, COVID-19. People stay home now, and not these things we had where you waste money, you spray money, you oh, good Lord. No travel, or, you know, travel when you really need to, and not do that every Friday. Our expressways are loaded because people are going to Uber to do what? And then on Sunday, they are coming back, they are tired, you know, and yet on Monday, they have to be at work. That's when you then get to office and you find them sleeping or dozing and everything. So if we could have this new behavioral order that the ambassador was talking about, I would be in favor of it. And I think we are starting to there are 3 funerals I should have been attending today. I've been able to attend one on Zoom before coming here, because government says you must not be more than 20, and 20 is limited then to members of the family. Maybe we will be able to actually curb our insensate behavior at reckless money spending. And thank God to COVID-19. I hope we will now build up our hospitals. The only problem is we don't learn. As soon as this COVID-19 is over and they open airports, the minister, one of the things a government should, I know you are all former civil servants, and it's one of the parts of office, but I almost got Murtala Mohammed in 1975 to agree to counsel the right to medical attention abroad for cabinet members and for civil servants. People like Ayida, Asildo, they fought like hell against it. Longer, that is one of the perks of civil servants. Their salaries are low, and this is one of the things they enjoy, and this. So till today now, it's still in the conditions of service. It's just that now you can't go. They won't let you in there anyway, even if we open our airport. So I hope we've learned that lesson, that we will restore our teaching hospitals and our general hospitals and have a proper health care so that for the next pandemic, we will not be caught pants down, as they say. So is China our friend? No, China is not our friend. Go and ask the East Africans. Go and ask the Kenyans. They've discovered that agreements have been signed where the Chinese provide the loans in yuan, their own money, but you pay back in dollars, not in the yuan. I don't know what is in their loan agreement they signed with us. It cannot be different from that. Rwanda has kicked them out. That it doesn't intend to be colonized a second time. And I don't know why we continue to agree to this loan agreement without proper scrutiny by the National Assembly. That's their job. They should leave NDDC alone. Let them look at agreements brought to them and do a proper auditing of that and see whether it is in our favor or not. The Chinese bring their own people here, which was what the Russians did with Ajaokuta steel mill. They brought they flew in their own food, and all of this were built into the contract. Now the railways during the COVID-19, whatever it was, when we really didn't know what the Chinese so-called doctors were coming here to do. At one time, they said they were doctors. At another time, they said they were not doctors. Then at one time, they said they will not touch us, that they were brought in to take care of the Chinese working in Nigeria. If that is not an indication of an exploitative relationship they have with us, then I don't know what that is. So those are my comments on the issues that have been raised.
Thank you, Prof. Again, the floor is open, and I invite Ambassador Okonga. Ambassador Okonga, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And I'd like to join those who have spoken before me to thank our distinguished former foreign minister for his very erudite paper. He gave us a lot of things to talk about and a lot of things to think about too. And questions, and he has dealt with them very, very intelligently and clearly. I would like to speak to the issue of medication. And the paper actually deals with post-COVID. We don't know whether there will ever be a post-COVID. We hope there will be, but we know definitely that there will be a period when it would not be, we would have flattened the curve, and we may still have to live with COVID for a long time to come, even if it doesn't affect everybody the way it is doing now. And my concern is that we have had news about some of our people actually developing some of, I don't know whether to call it cure or palliatives. There is the issue of the monks. Are they monks somewhere in Edo State? And everybody received the news with joy that they said they have got treatment against COVID, only for NAFDAC to come back, I think within a couple of hours, to say no, they have not approved that, what is it called? I can't remember the name now. Whatever it is they came up with, that they have not approved it as how will I put it, cure for COVID. Okay, even if that was the case. And we also remember when Madagascar came up with its own cure. And immediately that happened, the Prime Minister of Madagascar had a meeting with the AU heads of state, publicized it, shipped the consignment to some African countries, and again, we didn't hear anything about it. Questions were asked about these two issues. And we also hear, and I remember very well that actually people went into the composition of Madagascar what they have come up with. And they said, we have all those things here. And people have been proposing that we take Jogoyaro, neem leaves, which other one? About 4 things, lime, ginger, and all the rest of it, and garlic. And that if you boil it, it will do this, it will boost our immunity. And it all seems to be in the realm of, you just hear and you just talk about it. And every time, I remember anytime we listen to the PTF, at least in the beginning, and all these reporters will ask questions about all these, I wouldn't like to call them concussions, but proposals for possible cure on COVID-19. We always hear the Minister of Health saying, oh, there's a department in the Minister of Health that is looking at it. We've been on this matter for about 4 months now, and we haven't had anything concrete from the Minister of Health. It's as if they have said, go and you are on your own. If you like, you use it, but we are not guaranteeing that it will save. Whereas they are waiting on and when you look at the Europeans or the developed countries, they are working very hard. They're working very hard to develop a vaccine, and we seem to be all waiting on this vaccine. That speaks to the inability of, I don't know, whether it's government or government institutions to really take on and encourage some of our people that will come up with concrete solutions to some of our problems. I'd also like to talk about the role of the private sector. The professor mentioned that, yes, the industrialization of our country will be driven by private sector. That I agree with. But the private sector itself actually is expecting the government to spoon feed it to do this job. When government sells things off, either companies that are not doing well or that have been badly managed, they jump at it. But they are not ready to really develop anything from the scratch. How many successful private sector institutions are ready to really fund a research center or take something and say, okay, because we see on the television, sometimes they will bring up somebody from far place. I've seen some young men have done cars and they say they're waiting for government. And none of this private sector has actually followed up on this, contact these people, encourage them, fund it, and take it to the universities. We have departments of mechanical engineering in almost all our, at least the first universities in Nigeria, for them to develop so that we can even, there was one that even happened about 2 weeks ago. It looks exactly like AKINYEMI. One village, one rural person came up with it. Nobody has gone to that man to say, look, instead of importing all these things from India or China, I don't even know where they come from. All I know is that they are a nuisance on our road. And if all those money we use to import such things are encouraged to be developed in Nigeria, that would be a basis for industrialization. Okay. It seems as if in Nigeria, we like to import and import and import. And if we want to start exporting, we have to, the private sectors, we have to really also let them know, encourage them, and teach them that they too also have to take some responsibility for the lack of growth and lack of development in this country. Because all I see that they want to do is to talk over what government has built on and then say, oh, they are not even adding any value. They're just milking it and maybe running it properly. So those are the things I would like to say, that our private sector also should be up and doing. They don't have to wait for government. I know there are issues of electricity and all the rest of it. Yes, we had such issues also in China, and that was in the past. They can generate electricity, just as the professor said, and create an industrial hub where all these things would be a question of that can be managed. And anybody who shows any sign of intellectual or manufacturing ability that will solve some of the problems we have in this country, I think the private sector should be able to take it on and encourage them. I thank you.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. Ambassador Igali, you have the floor. Ambassador Igali, please.
Thank you very much. So, moderator, can you hear me?
Yes, you're on.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. I think I should add my voice to appreciate the former minister. I had the distinguished privilege of doing a review of Nigeria's foreign policy from the 1960s. And Honorable Minister, I can say that your period of service as minister was a golden era in our country's foreign policy. And thank you for the lecture today. And let me congratulate Arcan for this series of lectures. They are quite enlightening. Ambassador Coker had made a comment on which I want to add just one or two words. There are many fora for discussing issues of foreign policy, and many of us belong to some of them, and I've made this comment on some other fora. We often seem to be talking to ourselves. Without sounding immodest, I can say that those of us who are privileged to have been in the foreign service are among the very best that this country has produced. And we're generalists, but we're able to hold our heads high in almost most national issues. But we often talk to ourselves. And I think we need to start a conversation on how the things we discuss and the very effusive good ideas can also go into the policy domain. Because many times the National Assembly has public hearings almost on a weekly basis. There are public hearings on many things. And if you look at it, almost everything has a foreign policy dimension, external debt, and all those things. We're not there. And when we're talking about the people that make policy and so on, going to the presidency, we technically are not there. So I think talking about COVID, post-COVID-19, following up from the lecture today and issues we've discussed, to what extent in our post-service years can we still be able to influence policy? If we go into a cocoon of retirement, which is quite comfortable, then we'll continue to complain in the various fora we have and continue to use, discourse and discuss. These ideas will not go anywhere. But we must not be talking to ourselves. Not everybody, as Ambassador Coker has suggested, maybe some of us, not everybody may want to throw his hat into politics. But for those who don't want to talk into politics, we must have a way of being able to have a regular liaison with the National Assembly in particular, and also with the presidency. Not only depend on the Presidential Advisory Council on Foreign Affairs, but also being able to have a link where it can become institutionalized. I thought I should re-emphasize that point. That bothered my mind all the time when I hear people talk, especially when I attend some of these public hearings, and you just talk for yourself. You don't represent a body like Arcan, which can really bring its weight into bear on the whole gamut of issues that are discussed at various levels. Thank you very much.
Erelu Tuashe, I don't know if you are still on. You have the floor. Erelu Tuashe, I think you've asked for the floor.
I'm here. I'm here.
Yes,
thank
please.
you.
Can
you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much indeed. Greetings all. Let me say it's a much cherished privilege to be able to be your guest, and it's wonderful listening to the guest speaker of today, and eloquently delivered thoughts, inspiring and illuminating. I also want to say how wonderful it is to have Mrs. Okonga, who, when she served in the United Kingdom, she left tremendous impact. Thank you, Mrs. Okonga. I happen to be one of the very few who served in British politics. And so it's wonderful to be able to listen to the discussion of today. I want to go back to Professor AKINYEMI. And looking at him, what came to mind for me is the womb in which he was conceived. His mother came to mind. I believe very strongly that good governance starts from the family. And I have been looking at him and thinking, which factory produced this kind of gentleman? And whether or not the factory is still open or it's closed. I want to talk about motherhood of Nigeria. And I want to say it's very important we find a way to understand how Project Nigeria, established by British government, or Great Britain, for want of a better word, how we have failed or succeeded in mothering Project Nigeria. I want to, first of all, having served in British politics, what also was going through my mind, the question about civil servants in Nigeria. Having served and had officers working to me and being directed by myself and receiving quality advice from them, I have concerns about civil servants. The concern may not be justified. I don't want to take too much time other than to say, I also happen to have the privilege of speaking to you from United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi to be precise. And how wonderful to be able to experience a country that was also under British colonial system and became independent in 1964. And immediately they changed to constitutional monarchy. And my God, how wonderful it is to see a nation where anyone who wants to work can come into this country and work. And anyone who wants to prosper has meaningful opportunity to be able to do so in a law-abiding environment where the rule of law must be obeyed. I want to say thank you very much for this privileged opportunity, and I look forward to another opportunity to join you. Professor,
thank you, Madam. Bola Ogutuga, are you still there? You have the floor. Bola, you have the floor if you are still there with us. Bola, did you ask for the floor? If you do not ask for the floor, Professor Olatoyede, Olatidoye, Professor Olatidoye, are you there?
Yes.
All right. You have the floor.
Thank you very much.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Well, thank you for the opportunity to just give a comment. Thank Professor BOLAJI AKINYEMI. He's a legend in my own mind because during the time when my sister, Sister Debola Olatidoye, was in the service, I kind of remember him very well at that time. And also thanks to the comment made by Ambassador Nike Ukonga, referring to Arcan, the role that they can play based on what Ambassador Koka also mentioned in terms of presenting bills to be sponsored at the House or to the Senate in Nigeria is very, very essential. And rather than just pontifying or just talking, when you have a person of the caliber of Ambassador Joe Keshi, that we all know very well here in Atlanta, Georgia, if you have an arrowhead that can be able to make an impact, when Nigerians in diaspora were just scattered and doing things, I know it was during the time for Ambassador Keshi in Atlanta that he was able to bring everybody together in terms of professionals and how they can impact Nigeria. And I still believe that sometimes when you have a person doing things, we're talking of post COVID-19 now, the whole world nation, instead of just on total lockdown, they are thinking of emerging technology like artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, blockchain, data science, Internet of Things, cloud computing, design thinking, quantum computing. If a nation is not thinking in their shell when they are just in isolation, God have a way of getting our attention sometimes. Take for example, we have to do everything remotely now, but in some other nation, people are just on holidays. I don't believe in retirement. I believe you cannot be tired. And I'm throwing challenge right here to Ambassador Keshi that this type of forum is very good, but if it's just on talks of things that is wrong with the country or things, I know you are not, you're the one we call the untribalized here. You just want to challenge people and seek for solution. As I'm sitting at home, I make my own mask, print things. We can begin to challenge our youths in doing things, 3D printer, when Professor Ambassador Nike mentioned manufacturing and things like that. Those are things that can be a pointed effort for Arcan. And we don't have to tackle all problems. Energy is an essential thing. I noticed Ambassador Igali also there. So if a bill can be promoted in a way, Arcan can be an arrowhead for some development, because all the ambassadors I'm hearing, they've already been in foreign countries. They know what it entails there. They know how to organize people. They know how to practicalize things. So I just leave it there. I hope that makes any sense in any way. But again, I thank Professor BOLAJI AKINYEMI for triggering and speaking to the mind of everyone again. We adore you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Olatidoye. I have Korede. I don't know whether this is Frank Korede Willoughby, but Korede is showing on our screen. So Korede, if you are there, please, you have the floor. And please, for all the next speakers, please just make your point as we soon be rounding up, so that we can take 4 or 5 more people that have indicated the desire to speak. So Korede, you have the floor if you are still with us.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you, Arcan. And I want to say a big thank you to Professor AKINYEMI also. He's giving us serious food for thought. My mind actually is in the world now because of the many issues that he's covering. But let me start off by the challenge that he's thrown to us, and that is, how does Arcan become an effective pressure group? I think that should be one of the main things that we should be seized and going from here. That is how to balance bread and butter issues with impacting on national development. That's my point one. Point two relates to issues of industrialization. Countries that have industrialized actually make a serious conscious effort to do so. That is first and foremost by identifying products that they can be competitive, then having an industrialization strategy, and then of course you back that with innovation and all sorts of research institutions. Madam Mukonga did talk about yes, we were coming up with identifying medications and what have you, but right now I'm not sure of the institutional mechanism that we have to examine these products and take them readily to production. But my major issues have to do with governance. I think when we remove the impunity from immunity, immunity conferred by law and immunity conferred by might.
Ambassador, we will move around a little so that your network and your screen can be good.
And things like that. Then it may become possible to address the issues of corruption in governance. Then we can move from the mission.
I think I did. I think we've lost Ambassador Willoughby. Can Ambassador Adekeye, please? We go back to Willoughby later. Ambassador Adekeye, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd like to join previous speakers before me to thank our elder statesman, foreign and a former foreign minister, for his insightful presentation today, and to let him know that I am a proud product of the policy planning department. And now, thank you, sir. Now, our guest speaker foresees a nationalistic world order post-COVID-19. And what comes to mind, and of course, he also said that those who have the possibility of having one leg up are medium powers. Then Nigeria, of course, is situated in Africa. What then would be the role of regional organizations that serve as mechanism for integration? Because obviously, as of today, the emphasis is on integration as a way to move forward the continent, for example, Africa, in terms of industrialization, in terms of all what we have discussed. So what then will be the place of regional organization vis-a-vis integration? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Mbonu, Chris Mbonu, Ambassador Pastor Chris Mbonu, you have the floor. Ambassador Mbonu, are you still with us? Ambassador Mbonu, you asked for the floor. Okay. Sam Debang, you have the floor. Sam Dabang, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Good afternoon.
Okay.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share from the lectures being organized by Arcan. I remain loyal. I commend the organization. I share the Honorable Minister's long-standing optimism that Nigeria has not lost the steam of becoming a medium power in spite of the huge theft of money amounting to 500 and something billion naira since independence. I am not sure, Your Excellency, if we can sustain this optimism in the midst of the frequent or recurrent call for restructuring, which sometimes makes it difficult for us to define the huge security challenges as a collective national responsibility. We also have the challenge of the corruption still going on in a magnitude that many of us wonder whether it can stop. We also have a huge energy deficit across the country, which is the basis for industrialization. And without industrialization, I am doubtful if we can attain that status of being a medium power. So with these challenges, Your Excellency, do we still have the ability to sustain this optimism that you have held for a very long time? I strongly share in that, but I'm actually worried with these huge challenges in our front. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you. I believe we have Ambassador Mbonu back. I believe she went to the kitchen for a drink and she's back. Ambassador Mbonu, if you are back again, you have the floor.
Thank you, Excellency, for giving me the floor. I really have been trying to talk, but I'm so grateful now. Let me start by thanking you for this lecture, and to thank His Excellency Professor AKINYEMI for the wonderful expose. Your Excellency, just this morning on Arcan platform, we were discussing about loan from China. Many of you know my stand on China. It's China, and I'm happy that Professor AKINYEMI said it. He called a spade a spade. Is China our friend? No. And I want to repeat it, to put it on record, China is not our friend. I asked a question and I put it on our platform this morning. UAE, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, just like Nigerian oil producing countries, none of them has ever touched any loan. And we are taking loan from China, China of all countries with those stringent conditions. How can we collect loan at the expense of our sovereignty? I really don't know why we are going to do it. People call me China, you have China phobia. No, I think about my country, about my children, about my grandchildren. I don't like them because they don't like us. There is nothing altruistic about what they are doing. And I think that our lawmakers should be helped. They are carrying out their oversight, the duties that they are doing it so warmly and so dispassionately. I think we need to support them. Having said this on China, let us look into all these loans. Do we really need these loans from China? Let me come back to what His Excellency Professor AKINYEMI said. He said something about the man that came back from, I think he's from Sokoto. I am an alumnus of NIPS, the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies. There is no topic on this planet Earth that we have not discussed. I wrote on human rights and corruption because this has always been my baby. Everywhere I go, I write on corruption, human rights, and stuff. We have done all the papers. So we don't have any lack or depth of policies. What we lack is the political will to implement them. And I think that maybe Arcan will eventually look into this. Not because I went to NIFS. There is nothing on this world that we have not discussed. So there is nothing we are lacking that we cannot get from NIFS. Beautiful, well-researched papers. And we always do what they call the pilot, presidential pilot, when we discuss and present those papers to the president. After that, they enter the archives. I don't hear anything about them. Finally, let me also thank Professor AKINYEMI. What we are going through is not putting the round peg in the round hole. Simple opportunities. What is UAE, Arab United Emirates? Nigeria will be bigger and greater than that country if we will give the people the opportunity. Nigerians excel outside. We have now a VP in one of the universities. We have this, we have that. Why don't they do it abroad in Nigeria? They do it abroad, we don't do it here. Because we are not giving the right people the opportunity to move this country forward. I think we should just come out, tell ourselves the truth, do the right thing. Oh, corruption, corruption, corruption. Who is not corrupt? Corruption is destroying us. Look at what is happening in NDDC. Look at it. So I really don't know why we don't want to tell ourselves the truth. Well, there is corruption, endemic, systemic. I've written on corruption at the UN. I've done so many reports. It was my paper at the NIFS. I've done a lot of corruption. So there is nothing again to learn about corruption. What we need is the political will or orientation. Thank you very much, because I know we don't have time.
Thank you. Well said.
Thank you, Excellency, for giving me the floor.
Yes, sir. Galaxy J8, I don't know who that is, but we have Galaxy on J8, and whoever is Galaxy J8, please introduce yourself. We want to know who is with us. Galaxy J8, well, if Galaxy J8 doesn't even know he has, can I yield the floor back to Ambassador Willoughby? Ambassador Willoughby.
This is Bola Kiterewa. This is Bola Kiterewa J8.
Well, thank you, Professor. You're showing J8, and I thought it was from
419. No, it's not 419.
China.
No, thank you, Excellency.
Yes.
All ambassadors and former speakers, they like always thanking all those that have spoken. But my own thank you is to ask God to bless all the members of Arcan, whether they like it or not, to bless the guest speaker abundantly. Why? Because all these events that you put in place, they make our cerebrum more alert, and I thank you for that. Now, the many issues that have been raised, I think that if the Arcan is to begin to impact, efforts will be made to, first of all, institutionalize the association. Like you have the Diplomatic Community Association in Paris. They have offices, they institutionalize everything, and then you can organize all these meetings, etc. On that basis, if you now want to propose a bill, etc., then you will be able at least to have the support of the public, the media. The first thing is institutionalization. The second point, one ambassador raised the issue of CMP, Concert of Medium Powers, probably being a division to do installation. No, if you look at AKINYEMI, he took this into consideration that without having all this industrial paraphernalia, we can still use our integrity, our personality, our regional influence to influence all others, ideas. So I think that the CMP should still be brought back. The question I want to ask is this: on the basis of the expectations that Professor AKINYEMI had given us, I see the fundamental problem is how do we bring about political will, which my sister, Ambassador Bong, something like that, raised. You see, in Nigeria, the likelihood of evolving a political will, bringing about that one, is the most difficult challenge facing us. There are three schools of thought on this. The first one was raised by the former leader of Libya. He said that neither peace, nor unity, nor development can reign in Nigeria unless Nigeria is divided into Muslim North or South. Terry Rollins in Ghana has a different story. He says that until, for instance, you wipe away all the leaders in Nigeria today, wipe away their colonial mentality, colonial legacy that is still there, that there will never be any way forward. The third school of thought is the proponents of restructuring. They are now saying that, look, since, for instance, in terms of our political governance, we do not have national consciousness. The Nigerianness in our mentality doesn't exist, and that we need to restructure. Do it this way. I am saying that there is no interest in bringing about political will. Nobody wants political will. And I want to submit 2 points on Professor Akinwade's and AKINYEMI's point that, look, it is the environmental conditioning in Nigeria of the future that will determine whether or not there will be any seriousness of purpose in post-COVID-19 era. It is the environment. If there is no Nigeria in the mind of everyone, certainly our attitude will certainly not be anything to write home about. And more significantly, in this case, I think if anybody believes that the Arcan cannot do more, I disagree completely. What you are doing already, the mere fact that you are talking to yourselves and talking to us outside goes a very long way. Development is first of all an idea. By the time you discuss between and amongst yourselves, that is the first pillar of development. Then you can now go out as an ambassador. Finally, the major challenge before Arcan is this. Arcan, as an association of diplomats, they have excessively become too diplomatic to the extent that they are no longer capable of speaking the truth to power. The Arcan cannot tell the government what is doing wrong. You are too diplomatic. You couch it in very pleasing words. This is the problem. Unless you now come out and tell the truth as it is, as many ambassadors have spoken, I think Arcan will not be able to do much. I thank you respectfully.
Thank you.
God be with you all.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Willoughby, I yield the floor to you. We are coming to the end of comments. One more to go, and we return back to Professor AKINYEMI to round up. Ambassador Willoughby, if you are still there.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you, moderator. Just 2 questions to Professor. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Oh, good. 2 questions to Professor AKINYEMI. He did mention about the gold in Elisha and the mining that is going on now in I think it's Zamfara. It has been raised that perhaps if states or regions have better control over their resources, will it not be more profitable to allow them to utilize these resources more rather than all mineral resources being within the exclusive list? That's my question. So it ties up with the issue of restructuring, but what manner of restructuring are we talking about? That's my first question. Second question is, now that we are looking forward to a post-pandemic view of ourselves.
Nigerians, I believe, tend to act insularly, that the world starts and ends in Nigeria. That's why there are lots of criticisms about the Nigerian behavior. Prof, how do we think globally and act locally? Think globally, taking account all what is happening in the world, but act locally. I thank you, sir. I thank Arcan. I thank the moderator.
Thank you, Ambassador Korede Willoughby. I think Mr. Adejumo, you have the floor for a few minutes, and we yield the floor back to Professor Akinyemi to begin to answer all the many comments that have been made this afternoon. Adejumo, are you still there with us? No, okay. I think I want to thank all those who have made comments and questions posed. Professor Akinyemi, I yield the floor back to you to respond to the comments and the questions.
That have been propounded here, particularly the erudite Professor Akinyemi, who has given us more than enough to take home and begin to query, interrogate the basis upon which we all have to continue to live together to achieve a dream that might still be possible in spite of the fact that all these deficits have been identified, and particularly the challenges of the post-COVID era for Nigeria. And that would be my last shot. And I thank the organizers for this wonderful experience. And I hope to be part of this gathering once again. Thank you so much, sir.
We yield the floor back to Professor Akinyemi again to respond to all the comments and the questions before we begin to round up. Professor.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Very serious issues have been raised in this last sector of this engagement. Let me deal with the issue of restructuring. Put simply, those advocating for restructuring are actually saying that we should go back to the consensus reached by the founding fathers of Nigeria in the series of constitutional conferences that led to independence in 1960. In other words, let us have issues that can be dealt with at the local level. Let's leave it to them. That Abuja, too much power is concentrated in Abuja. And that has led to issues being dealt with inefficiently. So let us have what in European Union parlance is called subsidiarity. Local issues are best dealt with locally. That is all restructuring is all about. I know people have been alarmed that restructuring could be a synonym for secession. It isn't. It is to go back to, to that regional conception that we had in the 60s. Obviously, it will have to be with a lot of modification. We have moved on from 1960. States have been created. Most of these states actually are financially unviable. So you cannot give the powers of the 60s to the states of 2020. Some have suggested that, well, since we're already operating informally on a zonal basis, well, let them have, if you like, 6 federations, and the states will be in the federation in which they are located, all within the concept of Nigeria. But all of this will come out. In fact, all of this were dealt with, if I may say so, in the 2014 National Conference report. We had 600 recommendations that were adopted without dissent by 360 delegates, representing every nook and corner of Nigeria. Those recommendations are there. They've already addressed this, and at no point during the conference was any recommendation brought up that Nigeria should break up, but that should be restructured in such a way that people will deal with the issues that affect them. So as long as Nigeria is run on the basis of peace, stability, and inclusiveness, I don't think anybody has anything to fear. It's when people feel that they're excluded from taking decisions that affect them that you have instability. Grievances lead to grievances unattended to lead to instability. The issues that we have had in that have led to violence in all parts of Nigeria is because there are grievances that have not been addressed. I understand that in Zamfara, for example, the problem that led to conflict between the herdsmen and the farmers is because people's cows were being stolen, not necessarily by Nigerians, but by raiders from outside Nigeria. Government was not doing anything about this. And so those who have lost their cows then decided to take it out on farmers by raiding their farms. And then this now led to conflict between the two, and it then led to violence. And this is my understanding. And yet it was not even started by Nigerians. It was started by people from outside Nigeria. That's a totally whole issue, again, which you may wish to discuss. Boundary security, border security. We came up at the national conference with a recommendation that there should be a border patrol setup, totally distinct from the Nigerian police and totally distinct from the Nigerian army, but whose sole responsibility and sole mandate will be security at the border. That recommendation is there. And if you don't like the report, look, there's no way you won't like something among 600 recommendations. Pick what you think is useful and start to implement them. And I may say that if you look at some of the recommendations that the National Assembly are dealt with in constitutional amendments, some of them have been taken from the recommendations of the National Conference without giving them credit for it. Fair enough. It's more important to implement than to start talking about who gets credit for what. But for God's sake, please go back to the report of that conference and see what you can do with the recommendation that, incidentally, one of the recommendations was, foreign policy, a foreign service that is devoid from the home service and that will be run and modulated by Foreign Service Commission. Professor Gambari was actually the chairman of that subcommittee, and that was one of their recommendations, and that was approved by the conference. Well, now that Professor Gambari is chief of staff, I hope he will use his position at least to push that to the attention of government. I am aware that the National Assembly is actually considering a bill that has gone through first reading on the Foreign Service Commission. And I say, good luck to that bill. And I hope that Arcan will push for that bill, will speak to as many people as possible in order to get that bill forward. So really, there's nothing to fear from restructuring. Now, what Samfara is doing about the gold is illegal activity. It is illegal because it is on the exclusive list. If the country decides that no, they want states to mine the minerals in their territory, let them amend the constitution and give the states. And that was what we had during the First Republic. Through taxation, the federal government can get some of their own resources back. But the people who own the land, who own the farms that have been desecrated through illegal mining activities, at least will get the resources to take care of the repairs of their soil. But right now, they are getting all the disadvantages and none of the advantages. And you can't ask every state to start doing things illegally. This is what loading the federal government with too much power that it lacks the personnel to supervise will lead to. Think globally, act locally. I'm trying to wrap that around my brain, and I'm sorry, I'm not too sure that I understand what that means. However, people who know me will know that I have always said Nigeria should not hesitate to push its interests globally. People who are Africans attempt to blackmail us when it comes to protecting our interests. But when they need our resources, that's when they come and talk about our being big brother, we are the leader, and they want to listen to us. But when it comes to fighting for positions, then they talk about us being too pushful. And that ends up, as it has done in ECOWAS, they are occupying, especially the French-speaking countries, are occupying most of the professional posts at ECOWAS headquarters. The same thing at AU headquarters. I don't think we should allow ourselves to be bullied or blackmailed into saying, yield these things to us. You don't need them. We need them. And that's why I'm so happy that the federal government is pushing AKINYEMI Adesina, is pushing Okonjo-Iweala, is pushing young Dr. Elias for the World Court. Let us fight for every post that is going on. The United States, Egypt, South Africa, they are not apologetic about fighting for posts. We will win some, we will lose some. That's fine, we understand. But for us not to go into it at all on the ground that we don't want to be accused of being too pushful, I don't buy that. Ambassador Willoughby had asked about the role of regional organizations in the new in the post-COVID-19 world. Of course, it is one of the arrows in the quiver of developing countries. Just as even now, we have ended up setting up regional organizations, and they have their role to play. Things that medium power countries cannot do alone, regional organizations become instruments that can push collective interests. So they won't wither away. In fact, they will be strengthened, provided we keep in mind that, especially for a country like Nigeria, France is an obstacle to regional integration in West Africa. France is not, like China, France is not a friend of Nigeria. France sees itself as a competitor with Nigeria for leadership in West Africa. Once you have that at the back of your mind, then you will know that everything you concede to a Francophone country in West Africa, you are conceding it to the French. They are behind it. So be forceful in fighting for real African or West African interests, and not just making a concession to an African country and not looking at who is behind that, that African country. I think, okay, yes, finally, Ambassador Okonga's point she raised about the COVID-19 medicine and so on. What is wrong with us? I mean, our scientists know the protocol for developing medicine. They know the protocol for developing vaccine. There's a universal protocol. It is not African juju. It is not white juju. You test your medicine on the stage 1. You test your medicine on about 50 people. If they respond positively, you go to step 2. You test on maybe 2,000 people. If you are successful, then step 3, you test on about 30,000 people. And each stage can be monitored by fellow scientists. You just don't bring a bottle, shake it, and say, I have got the cure for this. That's not the way it is done. And our scientists should know better than to make that kind of claim on the pages of the newspaper. In fairness to them, at times they are misrepresented. I have seen the bottle of medicine produced from that monk's factory in Edo. It didn't say this is a cure for COVID-19 viral problem. It said this is a palliative. In other words, it strengthens your immunity. Eating bitter cola strengthens immunity, but it's not a cure for anything. But the moment they said that, then the newspapers say, oh, well, a cure has been found. That's not the way scientifically. You jogoyaro, you drink it, and at times it works, and at times it doesn't work. But don't let us get things confused. I totally agree with her, and I have said this, government must invest in research and development. What has been wrong with what government has done in selling off our factories and our government-run businesses is They sold them to the wrong people. It's been sold on the basis of man, no man, rather than people who actually have the resources and the scientific background. And that's why I keep saying that two things are needed to make industrialization work in Nigeria. One is government must supervise. That way, the charlatans who call themselves businessmen will have no role to play. Because you sell the businesses to them, they dismantle and ship the parts abroad. They never intended the thing to work in the first place. And that goes to the Indian businessmen that they sold Ajaokuta to. They dismantled the things there and shipped them out. There was no value added. And number two, you are right, there must be investment in research and development. Things that can be supervised, not a question of giving 5 billion to somebody who has no clue as to make a tire, who has no clue as to make a steering wheel. No, that is not research and development. But if somebody comes and says, look at the helicopter that I have built, and you see that he understands the concept, put the money there and get maybe a more experienced scientist to help, to polish it, to develop it. And that is how we will develop in the country. Thank you very much for your attention and for the opportunity.
It's been an exciting, terrific conversation in the last almost 2.5 hours, and we are coming to the very end of program today. So I want to invite Ambassador Akinsoya, first National Vice President, for the vote of thanks. But before then, let me say that the summary of this interesting conversation will be posted out in due course. Because time has gone, we can't take it now, but we certainly endeavor to have all the summary, out as soon as we can. So I invite Ambassador Akinsoya to please do the needful at this point in time. Ambassador Akinsoya, please unmute your yeah, over, fine. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you, distinguished guest lecturer, and Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. The last 2.5 hours, we've had a very incisive lecture, very insightful, very thought-provoking, innovative in all aspects, from erudite prof, a teacher, an academic par excellence, and also the conscience of foreign policy and international relations in Nigeria. Is a known face and voice of international relations. And we are not surprised. Some of us that know Professor AKINYEMI very well know that he has a penchant for innovation. And a lot of them have been mentioned during this meeting. Is it the concept of medium powers, in which he posited that Nigeria has every reason to be consulted. I was present in the Institute of International Affairs years back when President Carter visited Nigeria. And in his introductory remarks, he said, Mr. President, you have left a big, great country to another great country. That resonates in many things. You've also talked about some of the things he did, his patience for not the potentialities of Nigeria being great, but that Nigeria is great. If we can get our acts together, build the necessary industrial and scientific base, Nigeria will not be where it is today. Of course, added to that is the issue of R&D, using our resources, God-sent resources, to be able to really make our country great. We want to thank you for everything that you said. As I said, you were very innovative. You gave us a lot of dose for thoughts. A lot of items were put on the table from various contributors. And I want to say, just before I round up my vote of thanks, that within the limitations of the Arcan, which is the Association of Retired Career Ambassadors of Nigeria, within our limitations, we are doing a lot. We are playing the advisory role. We are not an appendage of the foreign ministry. We are not a trade union. But in the context of what we are supposed to do, that we have represented this country in various capacities, and we have the capacity, we have the wherewithal to be able to provide some advice, some advisory capacity, to give some advice to government. And they have appreciated us. We have met the vice president, we've met the vice president, we have met the minister severally, we just met the COS, and we are on track. Even some of the issues that are being raised at this meeting, we're on track. We are aware of the Foreign Service Commission, which is a pet of our lecturer today, and we are on top of it. Any visitor to our platform will know that we do have robust debates on all issues, and we believe that our voices should be heard. And we still have a lot of our members, that are elders. When the foreign ministry was established, it was established by the 12, which we call the disciples. Only 2 of them are alive, and those are Chief Asiodu and Ambassador Tayo Gusulire. But aside from that, we have the non-Nigerians, Ambassador Atta, Ambassador Clark, and Ambassador Shanu, Ambassador Lisemeka, and a lot that continues to give us the backing, Ambassador Shinade and others. So within the context of our limitations and what we know our responsibilities should be, Arcan is well on track, and we will continue to do our best. One of the things that I took from what our eminent professor mentioned is the new world order that is going to be a lot of changes. We have had opportunities in our service to be part of the new international economic order. And we are also at a time part of the and all this, our experience is that to say that in the sense that we've never seen it before, we don't know when it is going to end. Boris Johnson just said some few days ago that it might end by the year mid-2021. And I believe this is the time that all the ideas that Professor AKINYEMI has put on the table today, we will discuss you extensively. We will report you critically, and we will get back to you on some of those ideas, which I believe is going to be the thing that will be discussed along the lines, the new world order, how we are going to cope with COVID-19. Some people have said it might not leave us. What is required is that we have to really get ourselves to live with COVID-19. As we lived with malaria, as we are living with tuberculosis, as we're living with Ebola, that it is of the things that we'll do. Lastly, you talked about the nationalistic and protectionist tendencies of many countries because of the universality of the pandemic. I believe that this is an issue that will continue to carry forward in building capacities for negotiations. And I believe Arcan will continue to play its role. Lastly, I want to thank all my colleagues for hooking in. I also want to thank a lot of our friends, even from the diaspora, that have made a lot of contributions to this virtual seminar. We are on track. We are looking at our silver anniversary, the silver independence anniversary in October. That will be an opportunity again for Arcan to continue to put on the table topical that will enable us to very pleasant lecture. And again, we thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Much, Ambassador Akinsoye. And before we leave, I also want to extend my thanks to my colleagues on the committee, Ambassador Adekeye, Ambassador Ozo, Ambassador Otukoya, Ambassador West, all of whom contributed to making this event possible. But my greatest thanks and appreciation, sincere appreciation, goes to let me also join, I think I have a bragging right as well, goes to my former professor and friend and elder statesman, Professor BOLAJI AKINYEMI. Prof, I thank you and I appreciate the fact that when I came to you, it was not a question of debate, it was something you readily accepted that you would do it. You gave us a date and you have kept faith with us. Thank you very much. And to my colleagues and friends who have joined us from all over the world, I thank you and we look forward to having you again when towards October 1st, when we hope to host another event. God bless you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Okay.